rushing yards and 15 touchdowns as a junior, Bilberry helped guide Fort Knox to its first state football championship appearance at the 1983 Class 2A Crowns. As a senior, Bilberry rushed for 1,567 yards and 32 touchdowns en route to a 1984 Class 2A runner-up finish. In addition to excelling on the basketball court, Bilberry was a major contributor to the Eagles' back-to-back Class A track and field state championships as an upperclassman, winning the 400-meter dash and anchoring the 400-meter relay winners in 1985. Upon graduation, Bilberry received a football scholarship to the University of Kentucky.
I'd like to thank a former teammate of mine, Tom Jaco. He's the one that nominated me, and obviously the Hall of Fame selection committee. A lot of coaches I'd like to thank: Joe Jaggers, Gary Thompson, Joe Washington, Joe Dickerson, Mike McCoy, Dave Schufelt, Steve Duncan, Lee Bishop, Lucian Taylor, dozens of teachers. I'll just name a few: Felice Wahlberg, Wayne Hill, Reggie Twyman, Wayne Kubion, Margaret Stevens, Pat Lewis, my guidance counselor. A lot of different teammates. I'll try to remember all their nicknames: Downtown J.B. Brown, Bert Herbenbad Denson, Dwayne Chubby Brown, Scott Chief Bryant, Ron Grandpa Harris, Ross Roscoe Kaufman, Mike Cabbage Moore, George Mandrake Estridge, Charles Pearson. We called him the governor. We went to Boise State as seniors, and he really was elected as governor that summer. Horatio Poppy Maranta, probably the best football player I've ever played with on both sides of the ball. Unfortunately, he was transferred out to Fort Dix, New Jersey before our senior year. At the same time he was being transferred out, another fellow by the name of James Webb transferred in. James doesn't really go by any nicknames because he's got a lot of them, and I won't name them all here, but I will say that just having a nickname is the ultimate sign of respect and admiration, and I've been very fortunate to have that friendship with James for the past 40 years. Obviously, my beautiful wife, Kathy, my lovely children, Emma and Jane, they didn't have the good fortune of being around during my glory days, but they did have the good fortune of, hearing me tell stories around the dinner table. They've been my greatest supporters. I can't do anything without them. I love them dearly. The sacrifices and support they've given me throughout my professional career is just immeasurable. Can't thank them enough. My older brother, Brian Bilberry, that's where you first become competitive. If you have an older sibling, we used to compete for everything, whether it be backyard football or bare knuckle brawls in the bedroom, or just wrestling, or we used to compete for remote control. We'd compete for leftovers at dinner. We'd get an equitable portion. The first go around, but after that, it was kind of every man for himself. But he was my constant companion growing up. I certainly can't thank him enough. Retired Colonel Ralph W. Bilberry, being my father, the ultimate role model, the epitome of what a father, what a man should be. He is, was, and will always be my hero. By the same token, Barbara Bilberry, my mother, has always been my biggest supporter. She's always had my back under any and all circumstances. She's my biggest cheerleader, not just in the game of football, but in the game of life. And I can't thank them enough. One of the happiest moments of my life is when I showed them the letter from Jerry Claiborne saying that I had a scholarship to the University of Kentucky to play football, and my father and my mother told me how proud they were of me. But it wasn't really me. It was the aforementioned coaches, all the teachers, all the teammates, my wife and kids, and all the family, all the colleagues, and the people that I've had the good fortune of meeting along the way. So I'm just very appreciative for the entire Fort Knox community and for their guidance and their support. In the summer of '82, that was my sophomore year, we moved to Fort Knox. We got there a little bit late. Practice was already 2 weeks underway, and I went to the locker room and I met Coach Jaggers. He said, "What's your name, son?" And I said, "Darren Bilberry." He said, "You go by Darren or you go by Bill?" I started trying to explain. He says, "No, let's get you suited up, Bill." And I said, "Okay." So we got me dressed out in my gear. He got me out in the practice field and introduced me to the team. "This is your new teammate, Bill Barry." And I again tried to explain, but let's see what you're made of, Barry. Let's do the Oklahoma drill. So most people are familiar with the Oklahoma drill. I was a ball carrier. Bert Denson was on defense. He blew the whistle when I was supposed to run the ball. Bert Denson hit me in the forearm, kind of knocked me back, rattled my teeth a little bit, made me a little bit dizzy, so I'm laying flat on my back. Coach Jaggers comes over, leans over. "You okay, Bill?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, Coach. I can only see out of my left eye. I don't think I can see out of my right eye." And he helped me up and he fixed my helmet and said, "No, you're fine. You're looking out of your ear hole. That's why you don't only see out of one eye." He said, "You good now?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'm good." He goes, "How many fingers do I have up?" And I said, 2. He goes, what's your first and last name? I looked at him and I said, Bilberry. Fast forward 2 years later, it's 1984. My natural position on defense was safety. And Coach Jagger said, you know, Darren, we might have to move you to defensive end. We need somebody with a little speed to keep contained. And I said, well, Coach, I want to play safety. He says, well, I know, but we need you at defensive end. So if I can find somebody else to play safety, then we're going to have to move you to defensive end. I said, okay, fine. So a couple weeks into practice, you know, Darren, I think this James Book fellow, I think he can play safety. We're going to find out. If he can play safety, we're going to move you to defensive end. Oklahoma drill, you know, James Webb, you be the ball carrier. Bilberry, you be on defense. I was like, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to get some revenge for what happened to me 2 years ago. And I'm going to rattle his teeth. I'm going to temporarily blind James Webb the same way Bert Denson did to me. And not only is he not going to play safety, he's not going to play football. So Coach Jagger's blew the whistle, and I went at James Webb, and he put a move on me. He faked me out of my cleats. He faked me out of my socks. He faked me out of my jock. He broke both my ankles before that was even a thing. So now I'm completely whipped up the tackle. I'm face down, and I got grass in my face mask, and I'm pulling out. Coach Jagger comes over to me, and all my teammates are oohing and on and laughing. And he looks down at me and says, you know, Darren, you remember 2 years ago when I referred to you as Bilberry? And I said, yes, sir. He says, well, I got a new name for you now. I said, what is that? Defensive end. So we moved to defensive end, and that was the end of that. It wasn't funny at the time, but James and I laugh about it a lot now, so that's just one of the many funny stories, and one that I always remember very fondly.